Hi guys and welcome back to Tapped In with Tapisha. It's your girl Tapisha and I'm here with Rahma, which is Abdi Fatha Muhammad. Allah yarhamu, may God grant him the highest ranks in heaven's cousin. So Rahma is here today to tell us about what happened with Abdi Fatah Rahma, would you like to introduce yourself, sis?
Yeah, so I'm Rahma. I'm Abdifatah's cousin, and I'm here today. Thanks for having me on to just speak about Abdifatah's story and share a bit more about what's been going on.
There's no such thing as thanks, number one, because at the end of the day, there needs to be awareness. And what happened, I felt guilty in it because I didn't even know. Tony from America, content creator from America, let me know what happened, and it was a year later. So, can you let us know what did happen to Abdi Fatah for us that don't know?
Yeah, no, definitely.
For those who don't know, I definitely know.
Yeah. So I think we'll start from the beginning. So on the 8th of June 2021, so over a year ago now, Abdi Fatah went to work. He was an insurance broker. He was working in a place called Wednesbury, in Birmingham. Some people might have heard of it, some might not. But he was working as an insurance broker, so he went to work one day normal. It was COVID at the time, so the office door was locked. And then a man who we now know is called Moses Smith was at the door. And so Abdi Fatah goes to open and unlock the door, and then Moses comes in. Abdi Fatah is dealing with him like a normal client. And Moses is like, I want to make a claim. There's some damage to my van outside. And from initial conversations, there doesn't seem to be room for a claim to be made. It just doesn't seem like it's worth going through all this hassle. So Abdi Fatah, continues to have a conversation with him. He's like, let me check with my manager. Then they speak to the manager about it, and the manager's again, doesn't seem like there's much of a claim, but Moses is like, come look at it, the van is outside. It wasn't like a policy to go outside, but Abdi Fatah is being a good worker.
Samaritan.
Yeah, trying to be, you're going a bit of and beyond for your customers and whatever. So Fatah's like, okay, let me go outside and go see this damage on the van. The manager gave him permission to do that. So then he's gone and left, and so the van is parked around the corner. I think there was parking spaces or whatever. So Abdi Fatah's gone out, and then Moses is like, oh yeah, just that damage a bit down there. So Abdi Fatah, he was a tall lad, bends down and crouches down to go see the damage, and as he's done it, Moses has then taken the knife out from wherever he was storing it inside his pocket or whatever, and then stabbed Abdi Fatah multiple times in a vicious attack. That was captured on CCTV. And he attacks him with such force that the handle of the knife snaps off in Abdi Fatah's neck. And then there was obviously Abdi Fatah receives medical attention on scene. He's taken to hospital, but because of the injuries and how bad they were, we know Abdi Fatah passes away. Allah yarhamu.
Allah yarhamu. I am so sorry.
Yeah, imagine how tragic of a story that is already in and of itself, and before we've even got into all the bit nitty and gritty. And then Moses hands himself into the police 2 hours later, and then he's initially charged with murder, but we now know obviously but and it's now come out that the police have accepted his plea, so he's actually getting done for diminished responsibility, and that's manslaughter.
Allah yarhamu, may God grant him the highest ranks in heaven, and reunite you lot together in heaven, inshallah. So if we go back a bit and I ask you, when that initially happened, did Moses ever and Abdi meet? Have they ever, has Moses come to the insurance place and had a conversation with Abdi before?
So Moses actually, he's been a customer of that insurance firm for 8 years, but Abdi Fatah personally had very little to no contact apart from that first day, that day when the attack happened, and there was something a couple of phone calls, but very he phoned up Moses one day and was like, where's a letter? And Abdi Fatah was like, yeah, I'll sort a letter out to your house. But beyond that, nothing else. There's been no contact with this guy who's been a customer for 8 years. Abdi Fatah wasn't the one who did the first sort of contract, didn't really deal with him. It just on that day, and little contact beforehand with some phone calls. But even then,
I know by reading up as well, sorry about it, I know this is a delicate topic.
No worries.
I know by reading up, I also saw that Moses had called in before coming, and he asked to see, like, to deal with Abdi personally. So could you let us know about that too?
Yeah, so which makes the story even more, because I've just said there wasn't much contact between Abdifatah and Moses. Why would Moses been phoning up being like, can I speak to that guy who dealt with me? On that morning, when the attack happened, he phoned in and spoke to a lady and was like, is that guy in? And then the woman was like, he's not in at the minute. Do you want to speak to another insurance broker? No, phone goes down. And then they've said that it was sort of like a phone call was supposed to go back to Moses and be like, Abdifatah's back in the office. But before that phone call even comes, Moses is outside at the door, and then what happens. So it is very strange, but I think that is a key thing to put across.
Definitely targeted.
Yeah, it definitely is a targeted attack. And it is definitely something that I kind of want to get across. Moses was a customer for the insurance company for 8 years, but the contact with Abdifatah
was slim to none.
Literally nothing, in comparison to what's then happened.
I also read in the article that Abdifatah was the only person of colour working for the insurance broker.
Yeah, so Wednesbury is a very, very white area, and Abdifatah was the only person of colour working in the office. So, I mean, you hedge your bets on that. You want to find someone from this insurance company. Who do you remember the most? Do you know what I mean? If you're going to target someone, who are you going to remember? And are you going to be like, oh, that 2 blonde girls or whatever it is? No, you're going to remember.
And Moses' ethnicity is?
White.
I'm so sorry again. So when Moses initially went to the police station, you said he was charged with murder, right?
Yeah.
And when he was charged with that murder, was there any, because I know now that they did drop the charges, right? They dropped the charges and they accepted his plea deal for manslaughter.
Yeah.
And the reasons behind that they are saying is because his psychosis and he's delusional. Just to for us to know, I know I've read everything, but just so you can let us know about that. Was he evaluated at the police station? And if he was evaluated, what did they say?
Yeah, so he hands himself in 2 hours later, says he has a fight. And initially, his charge is murder. He's evaluated by a top-level forensic psychiatrist by everybody's admission. The guy is a well-known psychiatrist. He evaluates him at the time and he deems him fit for interview. There's no sign of or mention of any sort of delusion, psychosis. Immediately, basically pretty much post-attack, when you think this man would be at the peak of any sort of, mental distress, there's nothing mentioned. He's fit for interview and he's charged with murder.
And I know when we were talking and we initially first saw each other, you said something that touched my heart, which was the fact that your family, when the media come to your family and they ask your family, do you lot want to talk to the media, you lot was, I'll let you say it,
Yeah, initially there wasn't a push for media coverage. There wasn't any of that. Do you know what I mean? A family is grieving a massive loss, and I mean massive in every sense. Abdifatah was loved by pretty much anyone he ever came into contact with. There was this outpouring of grief. People are trying to deal with this loss in their own sort of private and measured ways. So there wasn't really a push for any sort of media coverage. Obviously, it ended up in the media initially anyway because it was such a tragic incident. It happened broad daylight on a high street. It was bound to get some sort of coverage. But in terms of what's now me sat on your podcast and the sort of campaign with Justice for Abdifatah, there wasn't anything on that sort of level at all.
And that was because the family, when they heard that Moses was charged with the murder, you lot knew there was evidence and he's gonna get charged, and that's what you lot thought, right?
You as any normal person, a law-abiding citizens, you would assume a justice system would be fit for purpose. How can someone go to work one day and man just walk in, murder you in full view of everyone, CCTV footage, and then you charge him with murder, and then you just assume that the justice system is going to work like it's supposed to work. So you wouldn't initially go in, and you know, we all know obviously police are not you wouldn't always put your 100% trust in the police, but something this clear cut, there's at the beginning there's no sort of, are they gonna do what they do and like sort of let you down in that sense. So yeah, at the beginning obviously like you just put your trust in the justice system and hope it does its thing, but clearly it hasn't.
And again, may Ilahi grant him the highest ranks in heaven and get his justice.
I mean,
may Moses get the book thrown at him. Going back to the evidence again, there was immense evidence found, which are Google searches. So like before he even committed the crime, do you want to say what they found on his phone?
Yeah, so like I think
Moses's phone.
Yeah, so I think we'll talk about like how the attack in itself on the day, how he was composed, and how that was calculated. But definitely, if you look at the beginning, it was planned. Like obviously now we know the searches on his phone, but you know Moses was searching how many years do you do in jail for murder. He was looking for a Russell Hobbs knife set in the days before the murder. I mean that is a level of planning that the average person, like if you were. Like to explain it, he's getting diminished responsibility because they're saying he can't think rationally, and I think that's so important. Like you have to hit 4 points to get diminished responsibility. And then on the third out of the fourth point you have to hit, there's 3 options and you only have to hit one of them, which is quite confusing. But the one he hits is that he can't think rationally, so anything he does, so like the planning, us now would be like, well, how can someone Google how many years do you get in murder for murder and then how many years do you get in jail in England? You just be like, well, that's obviously someone who's planning to do something horrible. They're saying he wasn't thinking rationally during that point, and that was his delusion that he was being scammed by the insurance company. And like that, in that moment when he's Googling, how many years do I get Russell Hobbs knife set, that's all of him. Like that's all part of him and his delusion. So he was definitely planning it beforehand. We know on the day he went and brought a knife. Like we know in the that day, he parks up. He pays for a parking ticket. Like he walks in, like he's calm, collected. Like I think to the average person who hasn't heard the story, they just can't fathom how someone can like do all of that, and then they turn around to you and be like, yeah, that he was in a state of psychosis during that. Like, can you imagine?
No, and what hurt me even more is when your family requested for a third evaluation, they said no. They refused it.
No, the family put in an appeal and asked for a third psychiatrist because there was like you can get a third psychiatrist, but initially you'll start off with the 2 defense psychiatrists. They've obviously said, they said from the beginning like diminished responsibility, but from the police side it was like he has a partial how would I say it, defense to diminished responsibility. So there's a chance he could have like diminished responsibility, but it should be left for a jury to decide because they're looking at all of this, him being calm and really collected on the day. Like, he sits there and like they say to you, he holds this delusion about the insurance company so like firmly, like he genuinely believes the insurance company is scamming him. But if you genuinely think someone is scamming you, are you going to sit there patiently and wait for them and try and convince them to leave the office door and like patiently wait until they get into a vulnerable position? No, you're not. Like you think they supposedly believe
if
genuinely
somebody's gonna have a psychosis break, they're gonna have the psychosis break as soon as they walk in.
Yeah, like you would just be fuming. You'd see your worst enemy and you'd be like, absolutely not. You've taken all my, because that's what he thinks. Apparently he thinks they've taken his whole life savings. Like you'd be like, you've taken my life savings. I'm taking you now in this office, like right here. You wouldn't wait and hope that Abdifatah would come out in, out of the office
and pick the only black guy in the place,
and then cry and then make sure and wait until he gets into a vulnerable position to then commit the attack. So like there's definitely an incredible level amount of planning beforehand. They admit that there's an immense amount of like calculation on his behalf when he's actually committing the offence, but for some reason the police have all just decided that this is all part of his delusion, and throughout this whole time he's been able to be in a depressive episode and a psychotic episode and be able to control himself in such a manner that I as a rational person wouldn't be able to do. Like you put me in front of my worst enemy who's taken everything from me, and you just wouldn't be able to control yourself in such a way. Like you wouldn't if you genuinely believed it. So somehow he's managed, he's managed to put that across, and he's managed to get away with it essentially.
Which just gets me shocked, because there's also evidence they hid from the family. I don't know how these people found it normal to hide the fact that this man has on his Google history Tommy Robinson's, angry Muslims. What was the other one?
Racists something in England.
I got to look again. Sorry, guys. It's, angry Muslims in England, racist in England.
Yeah. And Tommy Robinson. So all those searches, like, oh, how many years do I get in jail for murder in England? Russell Hobnicer, those searches are used to prove his delusion, because they say, like, he believed the delusion of being scammed by the insurance company so much that he was then was searching these terms under his delusion. But the family consistently asked from the beginning of the investigation, does race play a part? Does race play a part? Nope, race doesn't play a part. We've not come across anything that shows any sort of like racial motivations. There's nothing to do with it. But obviously the family appealed. The initial like when they first said we want to take his plea, the family put in an appeal through the victim's right to review scheme. It's a scheme that exists, and in it they asked, like, can you explore race as a motivating factor? And then when they then rejected the appeal, in that letter that's come back, in there it said, oh yeah, well, there's nothing to suggest that there was anything of a racial nature. And by the way, the searches aren't even racist. They are Tommy Robinson, angry Muslims, racist in England. And like, you genuinely are horrified when you first read this, because who are you to say that that's not racial in content? I've not spoken to one person of ethnicity, told those searches to them, and they've been like, yeah, that doesn't sound racist. The average person doesn't just go and Google those 3 searches and not have some sort of racist background. Like, you're just not going to convince me and anyone with a sort of working mind that that's the case. But they were like, and then when the family questioned, like, why has that not been given to us, or like, why have you not been like told that exists? It was, you know, the media take a hold of these things, and it just becomes like, you know, a really it like takes a life of its own essentially. And when we didn't want that to happen, we didn't want to prejudice the case, we didn't want it going out there. And like, bearing in mind, this is you can't withhold that from a family. Like, I think that's a very disgusting position to hold, taking that choice away from the family. Like, the family have never given you any indication that this is escaping like the family. And also there's a difference between like saying, oh, we can't tell you this information because it might have implications on a future trial, it might prejudice the trial, and barefaced lying and saying, no, there's nothing that exists. Like, you need to have a balance. Like, then you can't just, you've lied to the family essentially.
How did the family find out? Through that letter?
Yeah, like, if the family hadn't appealed, like, that just wouldn't have come up. Like, you'd be sat here now not knowing that there was any sort of like racist searches, because they would have just, they didn't have a need to tell the family, because it was only through the appeal that they specifically asked them, can you look into the race, like, what have you got, kind of thing. If that question had been asked, we wouldn't have known.
So when you went back to court on the 5th of October, that was when they accepted Moses's plea, right?
I don't think the 5th of October was a court appearance. I think that was when the letter was dated.
Okay.
The plea is being held. I think it was last month that the hearing was heard in court, and they said, yeah, it's going to.
So when it comes to like us as the people, what can we do, you know, to make sure that like this guy's plea is not accepted, they try him for murder, and a jury gets to decide, not them, not a judge, you know what I'm saying? When does that?
Yeah, you're going to be shocked, but that choice, that's not happening. Like, it pretty much is that the plea will be, like, they're working on, he's going to be sentenced in January, so they've accepted the plea. What the people can do is learn about this case, because you'll think the justice system is for you until you read about something like this, and then just realize there's nothing. So
there's nothing we can do
in terms of the court process. Like, after the appeal, that's pretty much it. Like, they will just accept the plea. They refuse to ask for a third psychiatrist's opinion. They're just like, no, we don't have enough reason, justifiable enough reason to question our psychiatrist, even though the decision to accept the plea for diminished responsibility came in October this year. Like, that doesn't, like...
Ain't there a way that we could, like, show them this is the proof? We know of this. As a lot, protest and make sure that he gets tried. There's no way.
Like, he's getting his plea for diminished responsibility. And that's the thing. There's no, like, recourse for, like, a grieving family to... Like, there's not, like, you're basically at a dead end. Do you get what I mean? Like, they have control of that thing. And that's, like, the point of, like, the families. Like, they did an appeal because they obviously weren't happy with, oh, we're going for a diminished responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So you do an appeal. They evaluated the whole appeal within 4 days. Oh, we've got lawyers
4
already.
days.
Yeah, we've got lawyers already rating. Like, they've read the case. They're just waiting for you to officially announce you want to do an appeal. And then the response came back within 4 days. Like, that's it.
And when the appeal was brought back, they literally said he was delusional, refused for a third psychiatrist to see him, and they expect the family to just swallow it. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm taken back by it all.
Yeah, no, that's it. Like, they're saying he's delusional enough, and he believes that he's been scammed by the insurance company, and they just, like, that's just the way it goes, kind of thing. There's no more, like, room for now the family to, you know, go ahead and, like, go again and, like, try and challenge it again. Like, there's not that sort of like, opportunity available to them. But I think when the people, like, I've not heard, like, someone hear the story for the first time and be like, that sounds normal.
I
that
come
sounds
here
right.
today, I was like, okay, what can we do? What, you know, like, thinking in my mind, like, we can make a difference and we can make sure this monster gets tried for what he done, you know? Because, number one, we live in a country today that has a justice system, you know? It was very much racially motivated. Just me reading up on it.
Yeah.
Me having this conversation with you. I ain't no lawyer, no judge. Anybody watching this today is going to see the fact that, you know, this guy's a monster. He's a murderer.
Like, he actually is a monster.
He is a monster.
He's, like, the most, like, depraved, like, sort of thing you'd ever want in society. And somehow he's going to get a diminished responsibility. And, like, I think we've kind of briefly, like, talked about it, but, like, there's, like, apart from the fact that they think he's delusional and there's all this evidence that he doesn't, like, if you found out what, like, how he's got, like, this diagnosis, so they've diagnosed him with severe depression with possible psychosis. They admit that diagnosis happened whilst he was in prison. After, obviously, you're going to go to prison, you're going to deteriorate in mental health. Like, who wouldn't? You're not going to go in there and start thriving. Do you know what I mean?
No.
They admit that diagnosis was possibly affected by his time in prison, because by the time they've seen him, he's obviously spent time in prison. Most of the reporting beforehand about his mental health comes from him. Like, the delusions and the psychosis, it comes from Moses himself. It's like, if you were to commit a crime and were to hand yourself in and then be like, you know, you're suffering anything, hear voices all the time. Like, I'm just going through a period of delusion psychosis. And, like, that plus then a later mental health diagnosis post-attack, and then being like, it's all the little things they lined up.
And the Google search, Abayo, the Google search where he searched, how long am I going to get if I commit murder? Like that's, he, like, searched that.
Like, I think that's very rational. Like, if you're going to go and commit a crime, like, you would want to know. Like,
if somebody's lost it, you're not going to think,
care.
How much am I going to get in jail?
You're not going to care. You'll do 100 years in jail just because you genuinely believe that what you're doing is, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you feel like you've been wronged. I don't care how many years I get in prison. But he's thinking very carefully about his consequences. But for some reason, the police are just like, because they're following, the reason is they're following their psychiatrist, but they believe the psychiatrist is like, yeah, it's all part of his delusion. And because that's, like, one psychiatrist saying all part of his delusions, that's it. Like, that's all his case is based on. Do you get what I mean? And, like, my initial thought was, okay, like, you, like, are going to put this case ahead and say that, you know, he's got mental issues and, like, he's delusional and whatnot. But, like, if you were to give it to 12 people and a jury for them to decide it, it would never be that, like, Do you know what I mean? Like,
That
clear
simple,
cut. They would never be
no.
that simple. There would be people who push back and be like, well, is he really that mentally ill? Because, do you know, before that, he searched, but he brought a knife. You know, he parked properly. Like, he paid for a parking ticket. And the day he committed the offence, you're about to go see in your own world, apparently, in your delusions, your worst nightmare, your worst enemy, and you've got time to pay for a parking ticket. You've got time to speak to people normally. You're not exhibiting any sort of unusual behaviour. Also, if you're sat opposite a person who's in psychosis, you're telling me you're going to go outside and, you know, let them take you around to the parking spot to look at a van, you would initially be like, hang on a minute.
And the
like,
other thing that threw me off, sis, was the fact that after he committed the crime, he went over to a shopping mall and there's no CCTV. Yeah. What shopping mall does not have no CCTV? Make it make sense.
Yeah, like
it makes none.
This place called Marketplace, for 2 hours, we just have no idea what Moses was doing post-attack. And apparently we shouldn't, like, that shouldn't be of, like, too much concern. Like, oh, don't worry about it, or like, we can't figure out much. But, you know, it's not the main part of the case. Like, you know, don't worry your head about it too much. Like, where was he for 2 hours after he's just committed the attack? And then obviously we know he hands himself in and says, I had a fight. Like, but if you genuinely believe your delusion, you wouldn't, like, that's the thing. You can't believe your delusion so much and at the same time know when to start lying and covering up. Do you get what I mean? Like, you genuinely believe that this man has scammed you. Why, when you've handed in yourself to the police, have you not said, you know, I've done something wrong, or, like, you know, I've killed someone, but he scammed me, like, he was taking my life savings. You know to go to the police and you know to lie and say you've had a fight when it clearly wasn't a fight. You know, like, they admit that he knows what he was doing. Like, he understands his conduct and he knows when to exercise self-control. So it's under no question that when he hands himself into police, he's lying. But it's like,
so why are they not questioning him so much about this so-called fight he had?
It like, I can't explain to you, like, nothing, none of that matters. So much focus has been given on to, like, Moses and his
Moses the monster
and his delusions and, like, you know, his psychosis and whatever. But, like, if you look at all the other, like, you can very easily sit there and put all these little bits together and come to the conclusion that no, he was very rational. He knew what he was doing.
He was a calculated, racist, evil white man.
Racist killer, and, like, knew exactly what he was doing, and he should face, like, a murder trial for that. But that's not the way the story has played out, or, like, this case has played out. And it's just so frustrating. Like, you feel like you're banging your head against the wall, but it's just the way. It's just the way it is. Like,
but you know what? Remember, Ilahi, there's Ilahi's justice too, and may Ilahi grant your whole family Jannah, and may you all reunite in heaven.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, if you don't get the justice in this dunya, you'll get it in the hereafter, inshallah. But my whole thing is, thank you so much, because I did not have the knowledge that, you know, he couldn't, you know, the plea couldn't be took back, and he couldn't face, you know what I'm saying, the actual murder charge. I did not know that. And the fact that you're sitting here and you want to create awareness for Abdifatah so nobody else goes through it is a beautiful thing. So, like, I appreciate you and your family for that.
Like, you honestly, you wouldn't know how, like, bad system, like, you literally would. I was like, oh well, you know, everyone knows murder. Like, they're also, when they first seen the case, the police and everyone, was this straight murder? They've held that position. Like, there's emails going up until April where they're like, yeah, it's like, he has marked to partial defense, but it's going to a jury. Like, if you you're telling me this man is so sick. Like, he's so sick. He went and killed someone in such a horrible way, but it's taking you until 14 months on for you to be like, yeah, he's sick. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you should have acknowledged he was so sick day one. Day two, after the third interview, you should have been like, yeah, this man is sick. Why is it taking you until October? He was meant to be on trial in December, like this December, for his murder trial. In October, 2 months beforehand, after the family have prepared for a murder trial, they've gone to all these countless meetings where you've sat down to them and been like, yeah, sounds like murder. We're going to go for murder. And then in October to come to them and be like, we're accepting his plea. Like, that just doesn't run. You cannot tell me this man is so sick, so delusional, but it's taking until October to come to that decision. It's not happening.
It's not.
It doesn't match up.
And we know it's not true. And, you know, I don't even know what to say about them. Like I want to swear, I want to do the most, but yeah, man, I pray for you lot. May Ilahi grant him the highest ranks in heaven. I remember being live when I found out about it, and what you call it, people were spamming that knew him, saying how much of a wicked character he was, how they went to school with him. And all you hear is how nice of a human being Abdi Fatha Muhammad was. So
yeah, like if you look at his first, like on the first Instagram post, people being like, oh, he was in my primary school, and like he seems like he's been the exact same person. Like you can tell from that smile, like he's always been that, like you know, when people die, and then naturally everybody like starts telling all the positive sides to them. Like, oh, it's such a great person. Like anything that anyone ever said about Abdifatah was not an exaggeration. Like you know, on his till his last like moments, he's going out to help someone. Like you can't fake that character. Like there can't be so many people coming out with that point being like, such a lovely gentleman. Like one of the first articles that came out, like obviously, like, you know, the journalists, they speak to like local shops, and there's a shop guy like quoted in the newspaper being like, oh, he was such a lovely guy. Like whenever he came in, no matter how much of a rush he was, he always let like someone who's behind him like go in front of him. Like if we astaghfirullah was to die like now or be murdered, the shopkeeper, local boss man's not coming around being like speaking on my character. Yeah, they're not speaking on your character and being like, oh my god, you so, like to repeatedly do that like action that it's like noticed upon. Like the average person is just not gonna have that. Like the police, everybody know, like it was said in court, like how innocent Abdifatah was. He's never like put a foot wrong. Like there was no like, he was nowhere in any blame. Like you can't put anything on him. So like for that to happen to someone that nice makes the story even more tragic. You can't get justice for someone like that. Like who has hope? Well, like we were all like, who, when someone dies, who gets done for a murder charge? It's always black boys, but who else is getting done for murder? Like who is it? Like
for real,
a case this clear cut, like the man plans, the man comes in, takes his time, do you know what I mean? Goes in and lies to the police, all caught on CCTV footage, and then for the end goal to be, oh yeah, well, he's a bit mentally sick and like it affected him so much. It just doesn't cut. Like you can't get him done for murder. Who are you getting done?
If it affected him so much, why did the story change? Why was he so calculated? Why did he say go off for 2 hours, no CCTV where he went to, which is a shopping mall, yeah? Then, hands himself in and says, I had a fight. But now it's delusion.
Yeah, like he held the delusion so much that...
And psychosis.
Like, I was like, obviously, like when it happened, I was like, after like a plea for diminished responsibility, I was like, who actually gets like diminished responsibility these days? Let me go look. So I was like just reading articles, just seeing who else is getting like pleas and stuff like that. These are people like who have not taken like antipsychotic medication for like months. Okay, then I understand. Like, you know, continuous people being like, you need to help this person, like mental health services being like, this person needs help, or like they're coming out of a mental health like hospital, a stint. Moses doesn't have that. He doesn't have that sort of record. And this
monster as well was not on no medication beforehand. Nothing.
Not to my knowledge. Obviously, his medical record is private or whatever. But from what we've heard and from what they've said, it's not like he can have depression. Like that's the thing. He can be severely depressed with psychosis. But they're saying that
live in England, who's not depressed?
No, that's what I said. But the point is, they're saying he had that sickness. Like to get diminished responsibility, you have to have that sickness, and it has to also have affected you. Like your brain so much that it then you can't just go and be like, oh, I'm like severely depressed. They're saying he's severely depressed, and then that then had an effect on his brain and caused him to not be able to think rationally. It's not just enough for you to be severely depressed. It needs to stop your ability to think.
If somebody's not thinking rationally, sorry, honey, if somebody's not thinking rationally, yeah, they're not going to hand themselves into the police station. You know, they're not going to calculatedly, you know, Google these things. And let's go back to what we were talking about. Tommy Robinson's, racist England. What was the other one?
Angry Muslims, racist in England. And
angry Muslims. Come on, the proof is in the pudding.
And that has no weight. Like that was never in any of the, like I told you, like the family didn't know about that until pretty much like the day the appeal was rejected. Yeah, so that has throughout the whole thing has had no standing in it. Like how does that make any sort like in the team or everybody, like, you know, the justice system majority white, like police officers majority white, everyone's just sat there and been like, doesn't have a racial content. But then every other person I've told and said this stuff is racist has been like, well, hang on a minute, that does sound like it's racially motivated. Like, what are the chances that you are Googling all of that and you're not racist? What are the chances that you search how to get, how many years do you get in jail, Russell Hobb knife set, but then you're also mad. Do you get what I mean? Like, everything has fallen in his favor.
And the calculated maneuver when committing a crime. This monster asked for Abdi, walked out with him, pointed, waited for him to bend over, and then went in for the attack.
Yeah. And have you ever met a delusional person so calm and collected?
No.
Someone in psychosis, so calm and collected. And they say to you, yeah, but sometimes it can happen. Like, you can have these people who are psychotic and who are delusional, who plan to this extent and who can do this while delusional. Yeah, but what are the chances of that happening? Like, you tell me and sit there and tell me how many times you've seen that. Like, what are the chances that this Moses guy who's done this attack is the one in a billion chance of someone being so delusional, so psychotic, and then never having stepped a foot wrong? Do you get what I mean? Like, that's for the average person like us, and like they're meant to serve the public, serve the community. For the average person like us, we're not saying, okay, now let him out into the streets. Oh, that's fine. Like, give him his medication and let him stay in hospital and then let him out. No, that's not holding him accountable. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to share streets with someone who and even if the thing I don't understand, okay, like, you are going with whatever and giving him this plea for diminished responsibility. You believe like he wasn't able to think rationally. Fine, have that point if you want it. But if someone understands their conduct and someone's able to exercise self-control, that alone should be enough. Like, he's a psychotic person who understood murder was wrong, and for that he should be given like a lower sentence. They should accept his plea. But to me, even if someone, and I'm not trying to rewrite the justice system here, but to me, even if someone was really sick, but you still know murder is wrong, that should be enough. Like, he's not insane. There's a difference between.
But what's confusing me, babe, is so they're trying to say that what he wrote shows that he knew murder was wrong.
Oh no, they admit there's no debate, like on the prosecution side, there's no debate that he understood or he didn't understand. Like, so they say he understood what he was doing. Okay. There's no debate about that. They say he was able to exercise self-control. The third point, so he has to get one of those three. Do you get what I mean? Like, he has to he either can't understand his conduct, he either can't exercise self-control, or he can't think rationally. The only one he hits is that rational one. So they say he can't think rationally, but he can understand his conduct and he can exercise self-control. Like, are they not all somehow, like, what are the chances you only hit? That was my, like, I still don't understand to this day. What are the chances of you only hitting one of the three? Like, you can't think rationally, but you can exercise self-control and you can understand conduct. And the thing is, they're not saying he just has, like, he can't think a little bit rationally. Like, this guy is full-blown, like, cannot think rationally, because this delusion, he wasn't being scammed by the insurance company. There's no record of that whatsoever. There wasn't, like, he wasn't being scammed.
And even then, if he was gonna ask for somebody, it'll be somebody that was associating with him all them 8 years. Not the only black Muslim person that's working there. You know what I'm saying?
Why does all of a sudden Abdifatah become the insurance company in Moses' mind?
And his name is Abdifatah Maham.
Yeah, like, why does he all of a sudden, like, represent the insurance company and represent the insurance company scamming him? There's no answer for that. Like, it's not, they don't think it was a random attack. They know it was targeted. But why? Well, you know, it's just empty. Well, could race be one? Yeah, but there's no evidence of that because they don't think those searches are evidence enough.
I'm so sorry again, man.
It's just it makes you really, really angry. Very, very angry, because you would just assume that this wouldn't happen. Like, I don't know, like, maybe if there's something, like, you know, there was medical records of him, like, being, like, really psychotic and delusional beforehand, and then people could look at us and be like, you know what, they just can't accept it, or, you know what I mean? Like, you could come from it from that angle. There's nothing, like, you can get given every single fact. Like, this is all out. People will hear the story and be like, that doesn't sound right. She must be holding something back. Go and read the news articles. Go and read what they've said in court. Like, everything I've said here today is pretty much the full story, bar some medical notes that can't be said.
But even knowing, you know, like, talking to you lot good Muslim people, you know what I'm saying? And say that was the case and this guy was this, like, delusional, like, you know, crazy person that they're deeming him to be just so he gets a lesser time, right? I feel like that would have been more like okay, qofwalan, he was
Yeah.
crazy, you lot would be more able to just have more sabr.
Yeah.
But like, how can you expect a family to just lay down and take it when there's so much proof, when there's so much evidence?
And when you've constantly told them, by the way, that murder, they had them write a victim statement that was going to be read out at the murder trial.
Mm-hmm.
But what trial did you think was happening then? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't prepare for a murder trial. Make the family feel like they are preparing for a murder trial, and then when you say to them, no, we're not, 2 months before said murder trial, 2 months before, and say we're not going to the murder trial, then act a little bit like not even confused, but just be like, I don't know why you're trying to challenge us, or like there's not really a case for you to challenge, or manage your expectations, or the court process has done its thing. For them, the court process has done what the court process is supposed to do. But that to me is like, I don't understand that, because how is a system that's working? Like, do you know what I mean? How can you tell a family that is going to trial, book the dates in, and then 2 months before the trial be like, actually we can't, there's no evidence to say that this man isn't sick? Like, what an absolute failure. And that's the thing, I can guarantee, if you had come to this family within the first month and said to them, you know what, this man is like really sick, or like there's just something really weird about him, and like we need to look into his history, and like doesn't seem well, and like that could be a possible reason for why he's behaving this way. No. The first reports that they're getting from the prosecution it's in emails. Yeah, and they think he might have a partial defense, but it should be left to the jury to decide. You can't,
They made the family believe it's going to trial.
And then 2 months before.
And then 2 months before, a family have been waiting for justice for over a year. You want them to just sit down, lay there and take it.
Yeah, and just be like, you know what, that's probably right. Like, everything's been covered there. Like, no, it smells fishy, and it is fishy. Like, it just doesn't sound like something that was done with the, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't sound like it's been done right, but to them, that's exactly what it's gone the way it was supposed to go. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, you can't tell me this man was so sick, so delusional, and it took you until 2 months before the murder trial to come to that sort of conclusion. And whatever internal conversations they were having previously beforehand, that obviously wasn't changing to the family. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not telling the family, that we've started to have a bit of like nerves about this situation, and like we think we might have to accept the plea. End of September, October is when they find out that the plea they're going to accept this plea. Like, way to put that onto a grieving family. Like, they're already going through so much, and then now you feel like you have to fight the system again. Like, I'm the cousin, so I'm not even like imagine being, that's your like sibling or your son. Do you get what I mean? Like, I'm even a little bit more removed from that, and it's the most mind-blowing thing I think I've ever seen. Can I believe this is the way a family is treated? A victim. You almost forget.
I pray the family, Ilahi gives them sabr, Ilahi, gives them resilience, and like, Ilahi, waxa ka bari ninkaas inuu naarta ku fogeeyo. Honestly, I wish he goes into the hottest hellfire. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
And you know what? Like, just sitting here and listening to you talk and listening to the whole story, I swear I could never respect you, your family, more than I do already, because it's like, if that was me, I don't think I could have the resilience, the sabr, like the decorum, the mannerisms you lot have, and wallahi, we see it, you know?
I think that's one thing, like, the family, I think the family and who they are as people, like if it was going to happen to anyone, like, it's almost like you're lucky you've done it, or like you've done it to a family who like are so like, like just good Muslims. I don't know how to explain it, but like you could have had a family that were like really horrible to you, like they trusted you. I didn't have any like questions. I was like, yeah, well, they're just gonna go get justice. So then for you to then turn around and then put them in this sort of situation where they're feeling like they have to fight for the justice that should just, like, you should just go and do your job. That's your job at the end of the day, to do your justice. It shouldn't be like, oh, now I need to do an appeal. Do you know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't then have to feel like you're having to fight people. And I just think it's like the way it's all played out in the end is like, yeah, well, it's just very wrong, and it just doesn't. Yeah, it just really frustrating, really annoying.
No, Rahma, thank you so much for coming on, honestly, and sharing Abdifatah Muhammad's story. At the end of the day, we need to get it out there. We need everybody to get Abdifatah Muhammad's name out there. Let everybody know what's really going on in this justice system. And not only that, keep Abdifatah Muhammad and his family in your prayers because, you know, like, I respect you lot, honestly, and you lot deserve it. I wish you lot unite in heaven, like, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And thank you again for coming on.
No worries, thank you. Like, like obviously there's the Instagram page, Justice for Abdifatah. So like, I'd recommend people go.
Yeah, definitely
go read the story for yourself. Like, I'm sat here telling you what the story is, but you go and read it for yourself, and you see like written out in plain English for you to understand that this was a calculated attack by a man who had Google searched. Like, if you like, for if any other person had Google searched had essentially, which is how many years do I do in jail, and basically like, how do I get away with murder, and then go commit the murder, and you see if they don't lock you away for 25 years. Like, you go try your chances and see if they will let you sit there and say, oh, I've got mental health, I've got delusions, with no medical professional being before the attack attesting to that.
And just being from the monster's mouth himself.
Like, literally, there's no medical professionals beforehand who will sit there and say, before the attack, and say, this man has delusions or he's psychotic. We know immediately straight after the attack, there's no sort of mention of that by an experienced forensic psychiatrist. So the average person, you go out there and you try and do that, and you see if they like let that happen and let accept that from you. Like, that is bottom barrel standard of a justice system. Should not be happening. But go read that story, like, just go check the pages out and read that story for yourself. Like,
it will be down at the bottom, guys. Justice for Abdifatah Muhammad. Get the hashtags going. Like, make sure everybody knows Abdifatah, the wonderful human being he was, and don't ignore that, because I feel like the fact that he was a law-abiding citizen, the fact that he was this just happy-go-lucky human being that shopkeepers were saying good things about, his peers were saying good things about, that's what everybody needs to remember when they remember Abdifatah Muhammad.
Because the focus is very much now on Moses. But like, especially people who knew Abdifatah, like, we can, like, I would literally stand there and tell you, like, vouch, hands down, on the character of Abdifatah and who he was. And like, it just makes the story that much more tragic. And like, it's almost a shame that everybody else couldn't get to meet Abdifatah, because then you also would be riding out and being like, this is absolutely an injustice.
I feel like
someone who's
the amount of people, when you say his name, like, when I done that live, the amount of human beings that were vouching for his character just shows you who he was as a human being. So definitely, you know, everybody remember the fact that he was this lit, beautiful soul, you know, keep him in your du'as. Also remember this justice I've got a list. This justice system is not,
it's not fit for purpose.
It's not for us. It's against us. And like sis said, you know, you don't go try. But don't go try. But if it was to go try, even if you had like problems with your mental, I feel like they would sweep it under the rug and try you.
Or they would challenge it.
They will throw you.
Oh, they would challenge it. Or you would genuinely go out there and challenge it and try and put it to evidence. But it's just like, well, our forensic psychiatrist agrees that's the case. I actually asked, I said, like, what was the thing that convinced the psychiatrist that, you know, the man's not just lying and it's an actual real life delusion? Like, how do you know that? This is experience. It's essentially the lawyers speak of, just trust me, bro. Like, I've seen enough of this. Trust me, I know the man isn't lying. How does that work? Like, that's legitimately what he said to me. He goes, if he was lying, I wouldn't have said it. I would have said he was lying. From my experience, constantly, like, we were in the court hearing that day, the judge legitimately went on a tangent and was like, the forensic psychiatrist is one of the best. He's very experienced. He works with the prosecution. Who are you trying to convince, me or you? Do you know what I mean? Like, why do you keep telling me that this man has so much experience, and at the same time tell me then that this same man who has so much experience wasn't able to recognize these signs in September or February or January when he first spoke to Moses? Why does it take him until October to come to his decision? But he's also so experienced. He's of such a high caliber. where'd you go from that? Like, you're literally just like, there's no, like, I can't even explain. Like, there's literally no way for you to move. At the same time, telling you this man is so experienced, but he didn't. From the first interview, for someone that sick, you should have picked up on it straight away. Sorry, if you're that experienced.
It's actually ridiculous. They
It sounds almost fake. It almost
they
sounds
deliberately
fake.
ignored it, and wallahi, like, I don't want to sit here with you as a family member and go into my little conspiracy theories, but any human being that will hear this, I don't think their brain will help but think, oh, what? Like,
you can't
they're trying to get him down. Like, was the police involved? Like, the amount of stuff that's getting into my head is ridiculous.
Because you almost think like, and that, like, the police almost accept that it does sound like how can this thing happen? But for them, it's like, well, it really, there's no answer for this, so he must be mad. But for us, it's like, yeah, there's no answer for this, or like, well, I personally think it's racially motivated. I'm like, well, it's racially motivated. But even if you thought, okay, it doesn't sound right, like there must be something missing. At the end of the day, he killed someone. It's murder. Like, you can't just be like, we can't figure out an answer, so he's probably most likely mad. Like, that's just not the way a system that's supposed to work for victims and supposed to work for families should be working.
When he ended up getting charged, no, when he went to the police station and he got charged for murder, right? He was on bail he got charged for murder. Did he not admit to it? Like,
well, no, he initially first says he has a fight. And they've said to the family that they can't, like, he's not been speaking about the incident, but we know that's not true. But when he first hands himself in, he doesn't say, oh, I've killed someone. He just says, I've had a fight. But obviously they like knew, like, pretty much straight away that he'd obviously, like, and then after when he passed away in hospital, charged him with murder. But yeah, he lied when he handed himself in. That says a lot for his character. That day in the court when we were there, didn't hand himself in. For what his character, like, we're talking about Abdifatah's amazing character reference, like, all these people speaking on his goodness. Mm-hmm. Moses, you go find out what Moses' character reference is. Someone who's refusing to turn up on hearing day because he doesn't want to engage. Okay. What's that supposed to mean? Like, do you know what I mean?
It says a lot.
Someone who hands himself in and also he consistently lies in prison. It's been like I've seen the reports. I've heard it myself. He lies when he's in prison and he lies when he hands himself in. Like, there's evidence of him being a dishonest character. But all of a sudden, you now want me to believe when he says the insurance company was scamming me and I just couldn't help it, and like I really believed it. You want me now to believe that part when there's been a history of him lying?
No, and
you literally just feel like you literally get exhausted of having to explain.
It's so
why
aggravating because it's like there's so much, but then your hands are tied.
Yeah, that's it. Your hands are literally tied. But when I first heard that, like, they were going for a plea for diminished responsibility, and then they were going to go for then the family did the appeal, and the appeal was rejected. Like, I was like, the public will, like, the people, when they hear the story, are just not gonna believe it at the end of the day. Like, they're just not gonna sit there and be like, that sounds right. Do you know what I mean? Like, wait till the people hear that this man, walked in and parked properly and paid for his ticket. And like, I feel like I've said that multiple times, but I think it speaks so much. Like, that doesn't make sense. You want me to believe this man calmly walked in, paid for his ticket, parking ticket, spoke to people, sat there calm across the desk, waited until it came out. Like, you want people to believe that this man was...
He's a monster. Mad. He is a monster. And may Ilahi grant Abdi Fatha the highest ranks in heaven. I'm not going to stop saying it. And you lot don't neither. As for your family, wallahi, thank you again. I can't thank you lot enough. No. Because the fact that you lot, want to keep the momentum going, and you lot want to alert people and make people aware of what happened is a beautiful thing,
It's an injustice. I don't think most people would like. It is an injustice. Like, it's like the biggest injustice ever. But you kind of want that story out there. And like, just get that decided story out. Like, the article, like, there was published about the hearing, and it said, he was very ill. He was very unwell at the time. And like, the average person reading that would be like, yeah, he was very unwell. When you go find out what the evidence is of him being very unwell, do you know what I mean? Like, that it's just not going to stand up for the average person. So I think like just getting the story out there, like people hearing about it and then coming to their own conclusions, like getting all the evidence out there, not just what the prosecution and what people are saying in court and like hearing dates. Like when they get the family side of the story and you read those Instagram posts, you read it and you'll come to a different conclusion than what's come out in the court system. And like there's still sentencing to go. So like if you follow the page and stuff, like hopefully you'll be able to get like the updates as and when they come in and like see what happens to him when they sentence him. But we'll get to that.
Definitely, guys. Please make sure you lot are following Justice for Abdifatah on Twitter and on Instagram. Guys, make sure you lot, get the hashtag Justice for Abdifatah trending on all platforms. And thank you so much, Rahma, for coming.
No worries.
Thank you. And thanks to the family,
Yeah, thanks to the family for letting me on today and speaking about it. Yeah,
thank you lot. I know this was a heavy episode, but الدنيا اللي اسكو باهيها آخر اللي اسكو ما باهنا. You lot need each other in this life, not the hereafter. Guys, thank you again.
no worries.
Make sure you lot like, comment, subscribe, and justice for Abdifatah Mohammed, guys. I just want to hug you.